Okay, thank you very much, Aidan and Mary, for inviting me today, and thanks to Louise and Mike for their contributions. They were both, I thought, very interesting, and Mike's, yours really resonated in particular because as the father of two young children myself, I really have sort of seen the impact it has had on children. My kids are definitely affected by it, missing out on their sports and their other activities. So yeah, I felt that very personally, and they felt very personally having me as a teacher was a bad impact as well, I think. So yeah, I've stuck maybe a little bit more slavishly to the brief that Mary said. The theme of 2020 vision for our cities and regions. I've had a really sort of good look at my thoughts about that, and I do think maybe now is a good time. We've obviously had 2020 has been a very difficult year. But we are now, as has already been said, at a time when we're hopefully going to be having vaccines rolled out fairly soon, which are going to enable life to start returning back to normal. So I think probably a good time to start discussing our visions for the city and for our region. As I am actually a city councillor here in Liverpool, and I'm the Green Party candidate for Mayor of Liverpool, I'll be putting forward my ideas that are mostly focused on Liverpool, but do touch on regional issues as well. And as Mary's already hinted, as a Green Party member and a Green councillor, mostly what I want to look at is how, as we start getting our economy going again and life starts going back to normal, how we can be sure that we recover in a way that is green, how we can recover in a way that sets us quickly on the path towards getting towards net zero carbon. So in terms of Liverpool embarking on a green recovery, I've just seen in the chat that people are struggling to hear me. Is that the case for everybody? I'll just try and speak up as much as possible. So there is at least a political agreement across the spectrum that we do need to really address the climate emergency. Liverpool declared a climate emergency in July last year and have committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2030. And the city region as a whole has also committed to this, setting the target date of 2040. So that's a positive environment for us to be trying to do this. The UK government is also even showing some flashes of wanting to do something about it. There was a recent announcement about £2 billion worth of funding for cycling. And the Prime Minister recently unveiled a 10-point plan for the environment, which is a small, modest step in the right direction, but at least shows that he can see that it needs to be done, and he's starting to recognise the benefits that can be achieved if we do invest in a green recovery. So what do I think transitioning to zero carbon actually means for us in practice? What would Liverpool look like in 2030 if this was achieved? I'll just touch on 5 policies that I think would be really important, that I think will enable Liverpool to achieve a just, fair and a rapid transition to a clean zero carbon future. So first of all, Liverpool needs to fully commit to the investment in a green recovery. And that means ensuring that all of Liverpool's investment decisions are in line with that objective, and that the overall economic development plan kind of works hand in hand with the transition to a zero carbon economy. So for example, can we still be relying so heavily on international tourism and the growth of the cruise industry specifically as a key plank of our economic plan? I mean, are we sure that traveller numbers are going to return to their previous levels after the pandemic? And if they did, would that be something that can actually work with a zero carbon target? I'd prefer, investment by Liverpool, money that's currently earmarked for the cruise terminal to be invested in promoting local businesses, providing jobs that are sustainable for people and the environment. So investing in our local economy and divesting away from big companies that do use a vast amount of fossil fuels. I think the second thing that will be important, and it kind of ties in a bit of what Louise was talking about, is strengthening democracy within our city. Because we're really gonna, we're gonna need to bring people with us on the journey towards zero carbon, because there's going to be a lot of change as we move away from fossil fuels. And that's going to be a lot easier if people understand the reasons for change, and ideally if they play a part in deciding the way forward for Liverpool. So that means creating more opportunities for citizens to participate, moving away from the one party monopoly that this city's enjoyed for a decade or so. I'd like to see England eventually follow Wales and allow local elections to move away from the first past the post system. A proportional system for local elections will deliver a much more representative and better mix of councillors on the councillors on the council. That's obviously a long-term ask, that needs legislation. But in the short term, I would establish a citizens' assembly of 100 representative residents from Liverpool to help decide the city's response to the climate emergency, and to ensure that there's real, genuine, sort of meaningful engagement helping Liverpool shape its policies. This approach has been shown to work on the national stage, and I think it would be a really powerful tool here in Liverpool as well. The third area that I think is really important is how we produce energy in the city. So one key part of this would be a big program of retrofitting homes to make them more energy efficient. And this will obviously have the co-benefit of reducing fuel poverty in the city at the same time as cutting carbon. And in terms of producing renewable energy, it's a really important policy. We don't have the time to wait for a Mersey barrage, which is going to cost billions of pounds, and it's not going to produce a kilowatt of energy for several years. We need to emulate local authorities like Warrington, for example, who have built themselves a solar farm to produce clean, renewable energy for the town. We also need to maximise the potential for both on and offshore wind generation in the region, as well as making sure that we're leaders in energy storage systems like hydrogen and battery technology. A fourth area that I would prioritise as mayor would be promoting increased biodiversity and increasing the amount of space in the city for nature. It's a little bit different to the other things because it's not directly about getting to net zero carbon. It's more about promoting biodiversity itself. But that is a really urgent task in Britain. We're one of the most denatured countries in the whole world, and we really need to do our bit. Every local authority needs to do something to try and reverse the decline that species are experiencing at the moment. It will help the climate emergency as well, because the land, if we manage it differently, can become a massive carbon sink, sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere and storing it in the soil. So the fifth and final policy area that I'll mention is probably the most important. It's got the most potential to improve the public spaces that we share as citizens. It will help reduce carbon emissions, reduce pollution, and it will save lives and make Liverpool a better place to live. And that is, of course, transforming the transport network of Liverpool. We need to reduce dependency on cars in Liverpool. We need to promote walking, cycling, public transport, and where necessary, electric vehicles. Car has been king for too long, and as a result, we're seeing reasonable progress in reducing carbon emissions in basically every other part of the economy. But carbon emissions from transport are stubbornly difficult to reduce. So if I was elected as a Green Mayor, I'd pedestrianise more of the city centre, creating spaces for pop-up events, art spaces, and for just people to spend their leisure time. I'd introduce a smart road pricing system to pay for investment in a better, more accessible public transport system. And I'd divert spending on roads, which currently stands at £100 million here in Liverpool, towards measures that would produce attractive alternatives to driving. So these are the sort of policies that I think would set Liverpool on the path to a green recovery from the COVID pandemic. I think they'd improve people's quality of life and public health in the process. They are quite radical, they're quite big changes, so we do need to bring people with us, which is why public participation and equality and fairness have to be at the heart of delivering this vision. But there is a lot of public support out there for improving the environment, and I think there's a real opportunity now as we look to rebuild our economy after the pandemic. So there's an opportunity there, and I just hope we take it. Thank you.